I was 23 years old. Also. After dropping out of school for a while, I had switched colleges and switched majors. I had not made any new friends yet, but I wanted to, so I took a leap of faith. Months in advance, I bought 2 tickets to a concert that I really wanted to see, trusting that I would make a new friend at my new school and invite them, trusting that they would say yes. This was a far cry from the painfully shy young child I was growing up, the child who wanted to make friends with another child on the beach who had a similar passion for building elaborate sandcastles. Instead of just going over there and asking if we could build one together, like an extrovert would do, I carefully left my sandcastle, slowly inched my way closer to hers, gathering some small shells along the way. When she wasn't looking, I placed the shells on her castle. It was an offering of sorts, an invitation to relationship. But then I retreated back to my own castle. Later that week at camp, when we had become friends, I told her it was me who had placed those pretty shells on her sandcastle. She laughed and said, "Why didn't you just give them to me?" Why indeed? Well, because inviting relationship involves a certain amount of risk. Sometimes we are ready, sometimes we are not. What if we get rejected? What if they want different things from the connection than we do? What if we get hurt? What if we hurt them? What if we get used, manipulated? What if there's an extreme imbalance of expectations or energy exchanged? What if they don't show up? The extra concert ticket I bought was a symbol of faith in my own evolving process of inviting relationship. We're talking the early 1980s, so it was a paper ticket. And every time I looked at that paper ticket, I renewed my courage to seek new friendships. Then the moment arrived. I was walking down the hall in the Women's Studies department, and walking toward me was another student I had just started to get to know, who felt like a kindred spirit. I invited her to the Margie Adam concert at the local UU church. She said yes, and we are still friends to this very day. Amanda wanted you to know that she too became best friends with those 2 roommates at AmeriCorps. The relationship she was invited into led to her career and to meeting her life partner. You just never know what might happen when you say yes to an invitation or when someone says yes to yours. In his little book called Faith for the Unbeliever, UU minister Daniel Cantor writes about the concept and practice of trust. Who and what can you trust, he says. You might be a person who easily trusts others, or one who begins with suspicion. Most of us fall into one category or the other. Trust is an ingredient of faith that sometimes challenges us to give up some control or the notion that we are in control. It means finding comfort in change. Faith, excuse me, faith is what gets us moving in the morning or enables us to take on new challenges. Because every day, in some way, we move toward the unknown circumstances that will greet us. But fear can challenge this mindset, he continues. American culture plays on many fears, and can make it difficult to live with a strong sense of trust in the world. Many of us are taught from an early age or from our direct experience that we cannot trust others. Sensationalized news stories, and I would add, outright lies and misinformation in politics and the media, teach that the only safe way to live is to fear the stranger and protect what we have at all costs. With this mindset, we can forget how much good there is in the world. The answer, Cantor claims, isn't to let ourselves become isolated. Study after study shows that social cohesion is good. It's good for our happiness and our health. And just as friends can increase our happiness, isolation can increase our desire for self-protection. I agree with what he says, but of course there is more to the story. We must complexify our understanding of risk when we encourage each other to invite relationship. Some of us arrive in community bearing scars from past or present trauma that come from a variety of sources in our experience. Some of us arrive here with scars from abuse or addiction, from religious bullying, from exile, from violence, and the real threats that come from the isms and phobias that are embedded in our culture. You know them: racism, sexism, classism, ageism, ableism, homophobia, transphobia, xenophobia, and so on. I think we are generally aware of these dangers and harms that are so alive in the wider culture. I think we are generally aware of the injustices and wounds that they cause. But I wonder, how often do we consider that past and present traumas and the resultant fear and anxiety actually live and breathe within us as individuals and among our community at church? I believe we need to tend to our scars as holy and not dismiss them so that we can fit into whatever shape we think the community requires. Pesha Gertler claims her scars in her poem, The Healing Time. She wrote, "Finally, on my way to yes, I bump into all the places where I said no to my life, all the untended wounds, the red and purple scars, those hieroglyphs of pain carved into my skin and my bones, those coded messages that send me down the wrong street again and again, where I find them, my old wounds, the old misdirections, and I lift them one by one close to my heart, and I say, holy, holy." Episcopal Bishop Stephanie Spellers writes in her book, Radical Welcome, "We are already here. The strangers, the outcasts, the poor, people of color, gay and lesbian and trans people, young adults, and so many more. We are already here. We resonate with our church's theology and traditions. We love our congregations and pray and labor for their health, growth, and ministry. That doesn't mean we feel welcome. Spellers was speaking to mainline Christian churches, but I wonder if we might say the same of ourselves at times. If those very personal and widely systemic scars and struggles for healing are within us and among us, not just beyond us, I wonder what medicine we need. I think inviting relationship is the medicine. And the medicine is simultaneously more direct and more subtle than we might assume. Alice Walker wrote in her poem, Medicine, "Grandma sleeps with my sick grandpa, so she can get him during the night medicine to stop the pain. In the morning, clumsily, I wake them. Her eyes look at me from underneath his withered arm. The medicine is all in her long, unbraided hair." The poem reminds me that sometimes the medicine we need is not an over-the-counter remedy obtained through anonymous transaction and taken in the isolation of our own home. Sometimes the medicine we need is to be fully and wholly ourselves in relationship, in community. To get there, we need to invite and be invited into deeper relationship. Inviting relationships as communal practice will help us build the world we dream about. And it takes practice. Here at First Church, we practice inviting relationship all the time, and we don't always get it right. We are clumsy and awkward at times, painfully shy, or too much in your face. We make assumptions. We sometimes succumb to guilt trips, even though this is a guilt-free religion, remember y'all. We strive to stay grounded in grace. And we practice inviting relationship, sometimes with hope and anxiety in equal measure. For without invitation, what is faith for? A few weeks ago, a friend of mine invited me to a training to become a poll chaplain in preparation for the upcoming election. I had never considered this role before. I didn't think I qualified. I'm not exactly a hit the streets kind of minister. He's already laughing. But the key is, because my friend invited me and said we could go together, I went. Our relationship led to this invitation. And the training itself was steeped in relationship. For example, I was surprised to learn that de-escalation techniques that I thought must be mysterious are actually relational. If someone gets agitated outside of the voting site, my job will be to go to them and say, "Hello, my name is Dina. What's your name?" If they get on their soapbox, my role is to say, "I hear that you feel strongly about that. Please tell me more." The invitation is the medicine. Many of you know that personal invitation is the foundation of community organizing. Many of you who are involved in community organizing have invited me into various causes and actions and have often received, I hope, a polite no with regrets. However, every now and then, I say yes. And that's the thing with inviting relationships. A particular invitation or timing might not be right, and then again, it might. We must keep inviting and respect each other's yes and no. Democracy works only with participation, and to get participation, It takes inviting relationships. One of the many challenges since the pandemic is that cameras on, cameras off switch that we carry in our minds from the endless Zoom meetings. So in inviting relationships, it can take sincere effort to relate to each other in person with a cameras on manner about us, truly showing up for one another. The lure to hibernate is real, no matter what the weather. The inertia is real, and that's what we need to invite ourselves out of. Cantor wrote, saying yes is a tricky thing sometimes. Knowing our limits and what we can reasonably bear is something that comes with maturity. We often have to make mistakes with yes to learn those limits. The Hindu philosophy of Vedanta teaches that to risk is to step out past our comfort zones, to know that we could lose everything we guard about who we are, and to go anyway because the reward might be a valuable change. The reward is gained by surrendering to something greater than solitary existence. And in reaching for the possibilities that the world offers, we often find a strength of heart and soul that we did not know we had. In June, the New York Times ran a 5-day series about friendship, challenging people to invite themselves and others into closer relationship. There were helpful hints about how to stay in touch, rejuvenate a connection, and make attending to friendship habitual. The challenge on day 5 was to go deeper by taking an emotional risk with a friend that you trust. One recommended way to do that was to ask a probing question, not an invasive question, a sincerely curious one. Questions like, for what in your life do you feel most grateful? Given the choice of anyone in the world, whom would you want as a dinner guest and why? Is there something you've dreamed about doing for a long time? And why haven't you done it? And then the deeper one, if you were to die this evening with no opportunity to communicate with anyone, what would you most regret not having told someone? And why haven't you told them yet? Here at First Church, we practice inviting relationship through all kinds of small groups. Some are purely social, where you can make new friends, like circle suppers, whose registration ends today, just saying. Some are reflective, spiritual deepening, like the theme circles, whose registration ends next Sunday, where you can also make friends. And some are action groups, where people grow in their courage and trust in each other by taking action for a justice issue, where you can also make new friends. Some are exploratory, like the Defend Democracy Volunteer Fair today at 12:15. So what is your next move into inviting relationship? What is your edge that you're being called beyond? What new thing is love calling you to be? What new thing is love calling you to do? Because, as we know, the stakes are high. In the run-up to the election, for example, fear and anxiety is high, and lives are being threatened, most recently in Springfield, Ohio. Fear of the stranger is being leveraged and given more energy. And yet, people are showing up for their neighbors, for the stranger, for the other. People are offering radical welcome, which Spellers defines as the spiritual practice of embracing and being changed by the gifts, presence, voices, and power of the other, the people systemically cast out of or marginalized in society. Who is inviting you into relationship? And whom are you called to invite? May the invitation change us for good.